Be careful on who you decide to meet up with on a dating app because you might just end up on a date with a narcissist. When I was in Denver, I ended up matching with a really hot 39-year-old who also happened to be a lawyer. I recently called off an engagement, so casually dating other people was kinda in the books for me. Before meeting him, I made sure I took all the usual precautions. We made it very, very clear what our boundaries were and said that there was no expectations. So like either of us could leave after a drink and it would be totally fine. Also, we made sure to FaceTime and he seemed super sweet, totally normal. However, the second we sat down, it seemed like he was on drugs. He would literally talk a million miles an hour about himself and wouldn't let me get a breath in. And the stuff he was bringing up was just odd. Like he even included that he broke off an engagement too. Hold on to that thought. 2 drinks in, this man leans over and says, I've been diagnosed with bipolar and schizophrenic disorder, but I didn't want to talk about it over text. Because I don't know a whole lot about those mental disorders, I felt a little uncomfy. I also didn't feel like that was a first date topic. Then he literally starts joking about murdering me and states that he would use my dead body for Face ID to text my friend that I'm safe so the timing is off for the investigation. Like for part 2. Part 2 of going on a date with a narcissist. So I start getting uncomfy and getting ready to leave. He offers to call a car and I say, oh no, it's fine, you got my drink, I'm just gonna go. And he gets confused and he's like, wait, what's going on here? Are we not going home together? I expressed that I was just tired and I wanted to get back to my hotel so that I could sleep and get on the road in the morning. He could not have been more offended by this and kept trying to make sexual comments to get me to come back to his place. Like, no, that's creeping me out more. So I get into my Uber and I make it home alone. And he texts me, tell Elise I said happy birthday tomorrow. That is my mom's name and it was her birthday tomorrow, but I didn't tell him any of this information over drinks. That's when I realized he had found my Facebook and then he called me. He proceeded to go off and lecture me because he couldn't comprehend why I wouldn't sleep with someone as great as he is. He expressed how much better he is than my ex-fiance, who I never brought up over dinner. This is when he let me know that he did his research on me before even meeting me. And I realized that a lot of the conversations that we had over drinks was him just verifying that I was the same person he found on Facebook. He still contacts me and I don't know what to do or say. Follow for more. So this is why you should always get STD checked. Back in 2017, I met this girl, and for the purpose of the story, we're just going to refer to her as Ava. Ava and I had a very rocky friendship, to say the least. She immediately showed very toxic behavior, but I didn't know just how toxic she could get until this one night. I was sitting there hanging out with her at a little get-together when it was brought to my attention that she had been sleeping with my boyfriend. I sat down with her absolutely furious and told her that I knew she was sleeping with him. She denied it over and over and over again until I told her that I had proof of it. Once she was aware of this, she told me that she just did this to piss me off. And so that's when I decided to confront my boyfriend and let him know that I knew. And he did not deny it at all. Realizing that I didn't want to take the mature route, I decided to get revenge immediately. Ava's boyfriend and I had had a thing before him and Ava, so I decided to call him up. After I explained to him the entire situation about his girlfriend cheating on him too, he was down to hook up. I went to his house that night and we linked. I thought justice had been served, but the next day I walked into my house and I was completely robbed and I found a bump on me. Stay tuned and follow my Insta. Storytime part 2 about how me, my best friend, my boyfriend, and her boyfriend all got herpes. After I walked back into my house and immediately noticed that I had been robbed, I knew who had done it. My dad can be extremely bad at locking the door, so Ava had literally opened the door, walked into my house, breaking in, and took my bongs and my weed. I was absolutely furious, and later that day I literally found a bump on me, like down on my lady purse. I waited 3 days thinking it was just no big deal, but then I decided to go to a doctor. So I went in and the doctor was asking me questions and figuring out my sexual history. He asked to take a look at it and said he would call me in a few days with the test results. Well, I got a call a few days later saying that I'd come back positive with herpes. So I called up Ava and I was like, hey, like, you know you have herpes, right? So she had also given it to my boyfriend as well. So all 4 of us had herpes. I was like, I hope y'all like living with a permanent STD. Today, literally none of us talk and we aren't in the same relationships either. So don't be friends with toxic people and stay protected. If you guys have a story time you'd like to share, follow me and DM it to me on Instagram. So this is why you have to be careful of people videoing you doing the nasty. So every year my town holds this event called Movie Under the Stars, where essentially a giant movie is projected onto a screen, but all the kids in my area just go to mess around with each other. So my friends and I decided to show up to this, and there was another group of guys that showed up as well. And one of my friends ended up knowing one of the guys in that group, so we went over to go talk to them. And a guy who was really cute kept making eye contact with me. So I literally didn't shut up about him for the rest of the night. He ended up snapping the girl next to me saying, hey, who's the girl in the jeans? Meaning me, so all of us were freaking out and I got a Snapchat. We snapped for a bit and we planned for me to sneak out to go see him that night. So I snuck out of my friend's house, got to his house, and we did a few things, but no big deal. About 2 months go by and we're still talking, but we're also saying I love you. But I ended up being messaged by a popular guy around this time who wanted me to come over to his house. I figured since me and the guy that I was talking to weren't officially together, it'd be fine. So I did, but the guy ended up finding out about it. So I had to go over to his house and basically beg for forgiveness. He said he forgave me, but this is when he came up with the plan to video me, which went south. Stay tuned for part 2 and follow me on Instagram. Part 2 to my ex videoing me doing the nasty. So even though he forgave me, he still decided to video me like doing the famous call her daddy move. We continued to talk after this, but after a few days, some of the kids in school started to look at me funny. They would act super weird around me, and eventually I just asked someone what happened. And they were like, well, there's a video of you. I wasn't too stressed about it, I just asked him if he would stop showing people. And he said he would, but the video continued to go around. I started to worry once my best friend's cousin told my best friend's mom. That night, my best friend's mom went over to our house to tell my dad. My dad absolutely freaked out, and this is how everything went so downhill. My dad literally wanted to send me away to boarding school, and we ended up getting a call from the police about this issue. Guy ended up getting charged over this video. He was supposed to do community service, but ended up not doing it, so he was just fined. I really didn't want anything like this to happen, and we're now friends today. So I guess everything's okay. If you guys have a story you'd like to share, follow me and DM me on Instagram. So one time I decided to get revenge on my boyfriend by hooking up with his brother and glitter bombing his car. So back in March of 2020, I was working at this little travel stop. It's where a lot of the truck drivers would come in, and I ended up meeting this really charming guy. He would stop by there often, and he was really sweet and funny, and we had a really good connection. So we decided to start dating. But immediately after, it got very toxic. While we were clearly in a relationship, he never wanted to put a label on things, and we would get into extremely violent fights where he would threaten to slap me or beat me. I would usually retaliate by calling him out for being a really bad father. And also, when we were doing the nasty, he would say really weird things, like, I'm going to breed you, or trap me, I'm thinking boy. That's a really scary thing to say in bed. Ignoring all these red flags and continuing to date him, I figured out why he didn't want to put a label on things. It was obviously because he was cheating. I was upset and I told his brother about what was going on, and his brother came up with an idea for us to hook up together. And this continued to happen for a while until I felt like it wasn't good enough, and I decided that his car was going to be next. Like for part 2 and follow me on Insta. Part 2 of how I plotted revenge on my boyfriend by hooking up with his brother and glitter bombing his car. So by this time, I'd been hooking up with his brother in our house for a while, but the way that my boyfriend was treating me was just getting worse and worse. We got into a massive blow-up fight, and he told me that I needed a week to get my ish together and get out. But I ended up going out with my friends and drinking for a little bit, so I was kind of in my feels, and I decided to reach out and text him to see if he would want to work things out with me. But instead, he cussed me out, so my friend came over with a bunch of glitter. So we literally poured glitter all over his seats, all over his floors. I decided to go ahead and smash his taillights and side view mirrors while I was at it. To this day, he still doesn't know that that was me. He also let me know that he was not fond of strippers and that he would never date someone that was a stripper, so after we broke up, I decided to become one. And he would still continue to message me saying that he was going to come see me at the club. So I guess he is down to date strippers, and the revenge was honestly worth it. If you guys have a story that you'd like to share, follow me and DM me on Instagram. So this is about the time that I ended up dating a guy in order to cover up for dating another guy. So I was kinda sorta low-key cheating at the time. But I can explain. So to provide a little bit of backstory, I was living with my biological father at the time. Not exactly what I wanted to do, but this was because of some circumstances that were going on. So due to this, I had to move to a new school and start my senior year at a different place. A few days had started and I didn't really like it very much, so they ended up changing my classes around. And I got stuck in this new art class. So I walked in and immediately this cute guy walked in. He introduced himself, I'll call him Brad, and he said, hey, and we ended up talking the entire class period. So not only was he cute, but he had an amazing personality as well. So obviously I had to give him my number. There's no other option. That night he texted me how pretty I was and how he was dying to get to know me. But the text got a little bit explicit, and my father ended up going through our text messages and immediately did not like this man right off the bat. So when we started dating, I didn't get his approval either, and my dad made us break up. I still liked this man and was completely heartbroken. When I went to school the next day, I was told by another guy that he liked me. So I ended up coming up with a little plan. Stay tuned for part 2 and follow me on Insta. Storytime part 2 about how I was dating a guy in order to cover up for dating another guy. So after my dad forced me to break up with the guy that I was currently dating because he didn't like him, and I realized that this other guy at school did like me, I figured that I would talk to Brad and tell him this little plan that I had. This new guy that liked me was very cute, but not my type at all. But he did have a better standing with my father. So I decided to start dating the guy that my dad liked, but also dating Brad on the low key. Every single arc.
I'm going straight. The moon is rising, shining light into our darkness and on everything around us. Could it be that we made it through the hardest of mistakes? We got nothing left to say. It's you and me.